All right, so here's the deal. Once again, muscle ups. One of the things that happens is that when we are talking to the garage athlete that's trying to do all these muscle ups on their own, we're having a lot of discussion on when to move on to the next level. So one of the things that we say is that, hey, we want to be able to do some strict muscle ups for sure. Get strong in those positions, especially being comfortable at the bottom of your dip and knowing where to receive as we go through to stick that landing and not have these crazy falls where that's where shoulder issues happen and all kinds of dangerous things go on. So we talked about how to use bands to be able to work on the transition, drill the movement, which is key. You have to be able to drill the skill in a very controlled environment, so when it comes to the moment of truth, you have somewhere to go. Another thing we've been saying a lot is that, hey, what do we do first, a bar muscle up or a ring muscle up? I prefer to do bar muscle up first just because it's a little safer and it actually forces you to do better mechanics. One of the things that happens when we're doing muscle ups on the rings is that we tend to shoot through the rings, and now our shoulder gets into a compromising position and it doesn't have any room to transition. Once we transition on the ring, sometimes it gets a little crazy, and that's when the rings start flying out if we're not used to working high speeds on rings. Dips are not enough. There has to be more to it. So with a bar, A, it forces you to pull higher to your rib cage or even to your hips, so you have more room for transition. And B, what happens is that when you transition over a bar, you can catch yourself on your hip or on your chest, and even if your shoulders don't support you at the top, you are safe and good to go. And the worst that happens is that you roll out, but the bar is always protecting you, so you're safe and good to go. So one of the things that we talked about is that if you're 60% there, you're ready to move on to the next step. That doesn't mean you don't revisit the basics. Always come and revisit the basics. That's what your cycle should look like. We're 60% in our progression, move to the next thing. 60%, move to the next thing, and then we revisit several times until we get amazing at the basics. So for the garage athlete out there, what I notice is that one of the things that happens is that when it's time to actually do the muscle up, either strict usually doesn't really matter, but with a kip, what happens is that when we go to the top, two things happen. We either get scared and don't want to transition, or we transition too hard and now we drop through or fall through, and that's when injuries happen. So I've been playing around with some bands, and I felt like this was a little bit of the missing link to the muscle up progression that we've been doing on our own. And this is what we do. We basically take a band, wrap it through the ring, bring the band to the other side of the ring, and we're gonna give it a good little knot. In order to keep this knot fixed, we have several options. I've been using actually a towel, and I just put a towel in there so that knot doesn't come out. Sometimes when you have a new band, it actually is sticky enough that it will stay stable and still. So what I've been doing with this is playing on with the following. I've been using it as almost a bar that I have to get over. So as I'm doing my muscle up, I have a bar that I have to get over to get myself into the bottom of that dip. Not just that, I also call it the catcher, because when you do that muscle up, it actually catches you. So I do a muscle up, I get over, and I'm in a bad shoulder position. It actually catches me, allows me to get back into a stronger body position. So having that band there gives you a cue to A, pull a little bit higher on the pull up to get that bigger range of motion or better room to transition, and B, it catches you if you overshoot. And I'll show you a couple examples now on the big rings. So we got the catcher going on here, where we just put the band up, hooked it from one ring to another. Usually in this little loop, I like to put a little towel in there or something just so that knot doesn't come undone. You can get creative. Don't put anything that's stiff there. Something that's a little softer would be nice, just in case you hit it with your elbows. That's key. So this is how we're gonna do this. We're gonna grab the rings with our hands turned out. That's the same turnout we see for the standard in the games, turned out, and the band right in front of us. So when we transition, that gives me my supported position already. So I'm just gonna do my regular muscle up with a big kip, but I'm gonna either undershoot or overshoot. But the key thing is that this thing catches me. So right now I'm undershooting, but this thing caught me, so I can reset myself and it's holding on to me. Now I'm gonna do one where I overshoot. So I'm gonna come down, overshoot, catches me. I'm barely holding on to this thing, if you can see that, and that thing is holding on to me. Now I can kind of reset myself. Okay, I'm good, I'm safe, I can press out of the hole. So that's your catcher. Make sure you set a lot of tension on it so it acts like a bar. It's gonna force you to pull harder, force you to pull higher, but the transition is gonna be way better. Set it tight. You don't wanna have it loose. If it's too loose, if you overshoot, you're gonna take your shoulder into overextension and you won't be able to handle it, and then you're jacked up again. So find the tension that works for you. Make sure that you test it before you even get into the muscle up. Once it's set, ready, you feel safe and confident, go for a muscle up, see how that works.